The CeeDee Lamb holdout continues out in the Dallas Cowboys camp, and let's take a look at how their futures look at ahead of the 2024 season. They're over-under, down to 9.5 from a double-digit original posting, and to make the playoffs, favored still at minus 210. The Cowboys plus 150 to win the NFC East and 18 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. One can only wonder, can they finally win the NFC for the first time since 1995? Of course. Last time they played was in the wild card game, and they lost 48-32 to the Green Bay Packers in shocking fashion. I'm sorry to bring that up, Jill. I know every time I say it, it just is a little stabbing in the side of the stomach, but we got to talk to Dallas Cowboys. We got to talk about their season preview this year. We look back at this offseason. Jerry Jones said that the Cowboys were, quote, all in. And that was followed by two offensive linemen leaving, Tony Pollard going to Tennessee, Stephon Gilmore still in free agency, and plenty of other changes have been made. But Dallas in particular really did nothing, and they still haven't even signed CeeDee Lamb. So your offseason reaction and, what's the temperature out in Dallas Cowboys camp?
Well, I mean, I don't think Jerry Jones lied when he said they're all in. It's just the problem is that they have key players that need contracts, and that's going to take all of it. So if CeeDee Lamb re-signs, he's probably going to be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. When they have to re-sign Micah Parsons, he's going to be the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. And then Dak Prescott is likely looking for a new contract too. You can't really afford all of them. And Dak Prescott is the one that really has the question marks hanging over his head. I mean, this team, look, this is the first time that I've worn Cowboys stuff since that loss. I've been so embarrassed with what happened in the offseason and just how they haven't really made any moves. I mean, left tackle, as you mentioned, is kind of in shambles. They've moved on from Tyron Smith. They're either going to be starting their rookie tackle in Tyler Guyton, or they had Chima Uduzo or whatever. He basically is going to be hurt. He's out for at least a month in the preseason. And we're going to cover this a little bit more in a minute, but really the problem with this team is that it doesn't really matter what happens during the regular season. It only really matters what happens during the playoffs. And over the last 3 years, they have been historical third down losers. So I know that you have taken under on their win total, under 10.5. That's kind of where I have them projected at around 10-7 is where I project them to finish. I still think they're going to be a playoff team. They'll sneak into the playoffs in more of a weaker NFC, but they're not probably going to win the division with the way that Philadelphia is stacked up, and also the improvement of the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants.
Right. I think the NFC East is going to be a little bit more difficult than people may think, between the Commanders and the Giants making some necessary steps forward. And, of course, the Eagles are going to still be there as well. Listen, I think CeeDee Lamb's going to return. I think he's going to sign the contract. Micah Parsons seems to think so too. I can't imagine they let him go. The thing I'm worried about a little bit is Dak Prescott and his ankle. How healthy is he? Obviously entering a contract year. And then not only that, but the Dallas Cowboys running back room. Obviously, Tony Pollard leaves for Tennessee. Yes, he had the touchdown issues. He couldn't get in the end zone. The Cowboys bring in Ezekiel Elliott back from New England. Yes, he's a bruiser back, but I'm expecting 1.2 yards per carry from him, Jill. I don't understand how this guy is going to start at RB1. Rico Dowdle, also a lot of question marks, super young, super raw. I'm curious your thoughts on the running back room in particular, because, teams can probably sell out to stop Dak Prescott and the pass and force these running backs to beat them, and I'm not so sure that they can.
Yeah, I mean, I think your concerns are valid. I think really the only positive news of Ezekiel Elliott coming back to the Dallas Cowboys is my Ezekiel Elliott jersey. I can wear it again. That's pretty much it, because once he went to New England, I was ready to torch it. But one thing that we have to look at with the Cowboys, last year they had 103 red zone carries amongst all of their runners, and 60 of those were to Tony Pollard. That was second in the NFL. He had the second most red zone carries behind Christian McCaffrey. I don't think the Cowboys are going to miss him much, because you had kind of alluded to it. He could not convert in those key situations inside the 10-yard line. He only had 5 rushing touchdowns for the entire year. It hasn't really been the same since that ankle injury against the 49ers the year prior. So you're right, there's a big hole in the backfield. And I think it's obviously going to have to be a running back by committee, because Ezekiel Elliott, look, he has concrete in his shoes, can't really break away from a guy or break a tackle, but he's going to get the majority of carries inside the 5-yard line. But after that, once you're starting to look between the 20s, I'm a little dubious of what Rico Dowdle will be able to do. He hasn't led his team in carries since high school. He never did it in college or the NFL. Royce Freeman, he can't really stay healthy. He's on his fifth team in his career. He's not really ready to handle a 15 to 20 carry workload. I mean, I have a special place in my heart for Deuce Vaughn, but the guy is 5'5". He's shorter than my 7-year-old. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, I think they're going to have to ride the hot hand, go with the tried and true within the 5-yard line. Let's see how Zeke looks. But after that, it's a complete unknown. I think I'm just hoping that maybe they're able to sign somebody like Kareem Hunt, somebody who has got that nose for the end zone, has shown a little bit more burst than what Ezekiel Elliott has shown over the last 2 years.
Yeah, getting someone like Kareem Hunt would definitely change this offense because right now I don't know how the running backs really make a difference. You look at the wide receiver room, that's also a question mark for me as well with CeeDee Lamb holding out. Brandon Cooks just on the side of 30 now, and then there's so much unknown before him. And then you look at the schedule too. Like Dallas has first up at Cleveland, in which Dak's nursing an ankle injury in the preseason. CeeDee Lamb hasn't been with the team, hasn't been practicing with Dak. There's a lot of question marks. And you look at the rest of the schedule: Baltimore, Detroit, San Fran. They have the number one schedule. There's just a lot stacking up for me to get behind this Dallas Cowboys squad, which it obviously pains me to say that for you because I like you. I like the Cowboys in general. I don't have any.
We like money though.
Yes, I like money, and at the end of the day,
money over friendship any day.
Well, I don't know about that fully, but maybe in this instance here, because 1 year doesn't hurt the Dallas Cowboys having a down season. But I am curious, right? We talk X factors. Personally, I think the X factor of this team comes out in the wide receiver room because CeeDee Lamb and his question marks, Brandon Cooks turning 30. It's like, is Jalen Tolbert going to take that next step? But you, in particular, go to the other side of the field on the defensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the X factor starts right with the defense and Mike Zimmer because I love Dan Quinn, but for 2 years in a row, I just watched his defense get smoked by lesser offenses in key games. I think Zimmer's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder after that letdown in Minnesota. But like I alluded to earlier, like how the defense does during the regular season, I think isn't really going to matter because another thing too is a lot of people will look at their defense over the last couple of years and say, look at the scoring defense. But they're beating teams like the Giants or Commanders by like 40 points, and it's completely skewing those numbers, right? And so not only is the defense in question, I think the secondary is another question mark here, and whether or not DaRon Bland is going to continue his ascension, because last year he graded out as the second overall quarterback according to PFF and was fourth overall for a coverage grade. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him to come back in, especially with Stephon Gilmore out the door. A lot of interceptions last year, a lot of touchdowns. That's not necessarily sustainable. I am expecting him to continue to develop and be better. And with Trayvon Diggs coming back from injury, he's going to be starting on the PUP list. I imagine he'll be out there for week 1. So with him and Jordan Lewis, I expect that secondary to be solid. But Stephon Gilmore was a little bit underrated in this offense or defense last year with the way that he was able to play coverage. And if he's gone, that element is gone. And in the NFC East, when you've got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Terry McLaurin, Malik Neighbors now, your secondary has got to be on point. And if DaRon Bland was just a flash in a pan for 1 year and is bland, as they say, I'm not too optimistic about how this defense is going to fare. And then, of course, left tackle, I think, is obviously an important issue. Chuma Aduga, as I mentioned earlier, he got hurt in preseason, so he's going to be out at least until week 1. I'm just not sure if Tyler Guyton is going to be able to just come in and be effective right away. I don't know if you want to throw your first round pick right into the fire like that, right? And then Tyron Smith, big hole there on the offensive line. He's been a staple of the Cowboys offensive line for the last 13 years. And I talked about this earlier about them being historical third down losers. Why I bring that up is when the games matter, really all it comes down to with the Cowboys is, can they stop teams on third down? When you look at the last 3 playoff games they have played against the Packers and the 49ers twice, those teams converted third downs 19 for 37. They converted 51% of their third downs. Sheesh. So to put that in perspective, like the best team in the NFL last year was the Buffalo Bills, who converted 49% of their third downs. So imagine if every playoff game that you're playing the team that is converting at the highest percentage on third down conversion. And then Dak Prescott, obviously, 5 interceptions combined in those 3 games. 3 of them were in the first half, which are just complete momentum shifters. And then, of course, with third down, the other side of the ball on offense. Those three exact games I just mentioned, they were 20 of 45 on third down conversions. That's 44%. But that number is skewed because the only reason it's even that high is because they converted rather six of those third down conversions in the second half in a game against the Packers where they're already down by multiple scores. So it literally does not matter to me what the Cowboys do during the regular season. It just matters that when we get into a playoff game, can you stop a team on third down? That is what the teams that win do. And the Cowboys just have shown over the last 3 years they cannot do that.
You know, that's also them getting to the playoffs, Jill. And I don't know, I don't know if they can get there. I mean, it's going to be difficult. I think the NFC is making a lot of steps forward altogether. I think it's also interesting, right? I expect Deron Bland to be good, and I expect Diggs to come back and be solid as well, despite coming back from a serious injury. My biggest question mark for that defense is the middle of the field, and if Eric Kendricks can kind of play that role that Leighton Vander Esch played, because now Vander Esch medically retired. The middle of the field, we know the line's going to be dominant. We know the outside is going to be good. It's just a matter of if they can make those stops over the middle on third down, which obviously you just hinted at has not been the case of late. But of course, we can't let you go without getting a best bet for the season. Everyone knows that I'm down on the Cowboys. My best bet was the under. Their number one schedule. There's a lot working against this team that I'm not particularly high on. Am concerned about Dak Prescott as well in a contract year with that ankle injury. But you, in particular, are circling your best bet around Dak Prescott as well.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be me if I wasn't playing an interception bet here, I think at this stage, or a touchdown bet. But like the reason why with the Cowboys, why I'm going to be looking at an interception prop. Specifically, I'm looking at Dak Prescott over 9.5 interceptions. It's around even odds. You could even sprinkle on most interceptions at 35-1, but I would just do a very minor point 0.1 sprinkle. I wouldn't be going all in like a unit on this one. And as you kind of said, like this is a put up or shut up year for Dak Prescott, in my opinion. He wants that new contract. It's all going to hinge on how he plays this year. His new contract will likely make him the highest paid player in the NFL. I'm not sure the Cowboys want to go through that again when they gave him that last contract. And last year, he threw 9 interceptions in a year where it seemingly almost everything went right, except for that Arizona game and the San Francisco game. Things were going pretty well for Dak Prescott. Didn't have to probably throw a lot in those games as well when they were up by like 20, and then he had 10 the year before and 15 in 2021 in 12 games when he had that calf injury. So that's 34 interceptions over his last 45 games. And the run game is obviously going to regress. The O-line isn't as sharp. There's going to probably be games where they're trailing a little bit more now, where he'll have to try to throw himself out of a deficit, and I think that will lead to more turnovers. And if CeeDee Lamb holds out, this bet goes through the roof because if he skips games, I like this bet even more based on the receiving options that are there. And you alluded to as well about this schedule. The opening month of the year, dude, they faced three teams that rank in the top 5 in pass defensive DVOA, and the Browns, Ravens, and Saints. There's a good chance by week 10, he has 10 interceptions because 7 of their 10 games to start the year are against teams that made the playoffs last year. So like if we're expecting regression on this team, I think it starts right at quarterback, which is why I like Dak Prescott to throw at least 10 interceptions in the 2024 season.
I really like this bet. I actually did not think about it originally, and as you're talking to me about it, and as I'm thinking about it more, you even think about last year, the fact that he was that close to going over, and you look at the game script and the games that the Cowboys had, they had 2 blowout wins against Washington, 2 against the
MVP
Giants.
finalists too.
Yeah. Carolina, Jets, New England, the Rams, all of those games, 20-plus wins. He doesn't have to throw the football in those final quarter and a half. So getting 10, which, you look back at his game log as you laid out, all the good reasons why he does struggle at times. And, maybe he'll force it a little bit more knowing that a contract is coming and knowing that a lot of the Dallas success hinges on his shoulders. But Gilles Gallant, thank you so much. I hope the Cowboys win for, your mental. My pockets, they can live another day, but I appreciate you.
Yeah, 10-7. You win your bet. They sneak into the playoffs. Maybe they don't lose so heartbreakingly, and that I can face people in the workplace again the next day, maybe even wear a Cowboy shirt and not be embarrassed.